What's up, YouTube? This is the 82 and Old podcast, continuing on, looking at NBA greats who've been forgotten with time. Today we're taking a look at Woody Sauldsberry. Now, Woody Sauldsberry was born July 11, 1934 in Winsboro, Louisiana. But he would eventually move to Compton, where he went to Compton Union High School, where he was a basketball star. And then he would go on to attend Texas Southern University. However, he couldn't finish college, so instead of having an NCAA career, he signed with the Harlem Globetrotters. And he would play 2 years with the Harlem Globetrotters from 55 to 57, before he would be drafted in the 1957 draft in the 8th round in the 60th pick. And interesting fact, he's the lowest drafted player to ever win Rookie of the Year. And it probably won't ever be broken because nowadays the draft is only 2 rounds. Unless they change it up someday. I don't see anyone breaking his record. So he has a really good rookie campaign, wins Rookie of the Year, puts up 12 points and 10 rebounds per game. And he's on this Philadelphia Warriors team, which this is 3 years removed from their championship. Now, they have Tom Gola, Paul Arizin, Neil Johnston. So he's playing with 3 other Hall of Famers. It's a good team he's on. And the 58-59 campaign, he puts up good numbers again. 15 points and 11 rebounds. However, the Philadelphia Warriors for the 59-60 season would draft Wilt Chamberlain. And Woody Sauldsberry, although he was a great player and he was an all-star in 58-59, he was playing the center position. And who are you going to play at center? Woody Sauldsberry or Wilt Chamberlain? So you saw his minutes get reduced because Wilt was now the star of the team for the 59-60 season. Now, for going into the 60-61 season, however, the Philadelphia Warriors would just decide to trade him away. So they traded him to the St. Louis Hawks for Ed Collin. And in St. Louis, this is where the downfall of his career would start, because St. Louis at the time was a very segregated city. And the fans were very, very racist at the time. And even the players on the team. He was playing with Cliff Hagan, who was a segregationist. And the organization itself stood behind this policy. So he doesn't play a lot of minutes in St. Louis. He only plays 21 minutes a game. He only puts up 7 points and 7 rebounds. Now, the following season, for the 61-62 season, if you've watched some of my other videos, you've heard me talk about this. There was a Boston Celtics St. Louis Hawks game that was supposed to be played in Louisville, Kentucky. And as you all know, the Celtics players who were traveling down there, their black players were refused service. So Bill Russell, Casey Jones, and Tom Sanders, they all said, we're not going to play if this is how you treat us. We're not going to be your entertainment when you won't even serve us. And when the hotel found out that they were NBA stars, they said, well, we can break the rules for you. And this offended Russell even more, because he said, we want to be looked at as people, not as an NBA star. And what I didn't talk about in the other videos on this was the Hawks' perspective of this, because Woody Sauldsberry was an African-American player on the Hawks, and he stood by them too. He said, I'm not going to play either. So Woody Sauldsberry refused to play. Now, if you've heard me talk about this in the Boston Celtics perspective, the Boston Celtics, they stood by their players. Their coach and owner had no issue at all with them refusing. They even said they don't want to make sure that none of their players are ever disrespected like that. But the Hawks, they weren't like that. They didn't stand behind Woody Sauldsberry. So Cliff Hagan, who was a player on the Hawks and probably the second best player on the Hawks team, and he himself was a segregationist, he demanded that the Hawks fire him, Woody Sauldsberry. He said, get rid of him. And so they ended up just suspending Woodsy Sauldsberry for insubordination. And eventually they would just trade him altogether to the Chicago Packers, which, for people who don't know, the Chicago Packers was the Washington Wizards today. Back then they were called the Chicago Packers. So he gets traded there, and he plays a half of a season, and he gets traded back to the St. Louis Hawks. I know that's really confusing. He gets traded back there, and so he would play the remainder of the 62-63 season with the St. Louis Hawks. So his numbers are decreasing because at this point in St. Louis, in the 62-63 season, in the 23 games that he played, he'd only put up 6 points and 3 rebounds. But the problem was, going from playing in St. Louis, going to Chicago, and now back to St. Louis, the same problems were facing him, because in St. Louis, the fans were notoriously racist towards the black players. They were very mistreated. And Woody Sauldsberry felt like the team wasn't doing anything to protect the players. You know, like today, to give it like a modern context, I don't know if you guys remember, a few years ago, Russell Westbrook was playing against the Utah Jazz and someone threw racial epithets at him. That player, or that fan that threw those racial epithets at Russell Westbrook, got banned for life, and rightfully so. But you gotta understand, back in this time, they didn't do anything to protect their players. You know? It didn't bother them at all. They looked at it like, you play for us, they can treat you however they want. They're paying to see you. And this is ridiculous. Just because you're my entertainment doesn't give me the right to mistreat you. So he was being abused every game he was in. So he decides to retire early. And at this point, he's only 28 years old. So he would miss the entirety of the 63-64 and 64-65 season. Now, to make matters worse, the league kind of conspired against Woody Sauldsberry for just retiring on that basis. Because when he was protesting how fans treated him, he refused to play. So they tried to hit him with a suspension, and he just altogether retired. So the league didn't forget about that, and all the teams in the league made an agreement not to sign Woody Sauldsberry except the Boston Celtics. And it was Bill Russell on the Celtics who convinced Red Auerbach, the coach and executive of the Celtics, to sign Woody Sauldsberry for the 65-66 season. And the issue with this is he had to sue the NBA in order to be signed. And this was a suit called the Sauldsberry versus Kennedy, 1965. After being waived by the St. Louis Hawks in 1963 after disciplinary action with the Hawks coach Harry Gallatin, Woody Sauldsberry signed with Boston in November 1965 after spending 2 years out of the league. But the NBA president, Walter Kennedy, announced that he was refusing to approve Sauldsberry's contract due to his record while he was formerly a player in the association. Days later, Sauldsberry filed a lawsuit against Walter Kennedy and each of the NBA's clubs, excluding the Boston Celtics, in the U.S. District Court in Boston the next day. The U.S. District Court's judge, George Sweeney, issued a temporary injunction ordering the NBA and the Boston Celtics to honor Sauldsberry's contract and allowing him to play pending the resolution of his lawsuit. In December, Kennedy approved of Sauldsberry's contract after he agrees to certain provisions. So he ends up being able to play with the Boston Celtics for the 65-66 season. And he was 31 at the time, and he didn't provide much other than backup rotation defense. You know, he was a good defender, but that was about it. He didn't have much offense in the tank. He only shot 32% from the field. And this would be the end of Woody Sauldsberry's career. He's a one-time All-Star, a 1966 NBA champion, and a 1958 Rookie of the Year. And the sad part is, he never got over how the NBA treated him, how fans treated him. He actually, after he got out of the NBA, finally, he became a recluse. Although he was a car salesman for many years, and a few other jobs he held down, from what I've read into his life, he stayed under the radar. And he had depression issues for the remainder of his adult life. And from what I've heard, he battled alcoholism very bad. And he never got over the animosity and the negative treatment that he endured in the 50s and 60s. And it cut his life short. He died at 73 due to complications of diabetes. And he'd been battling with his diabetes for the past few years before his death. He even had a leg amputation. So he died September 3rd, 2007 in Baltimore, Maryland. And from what I've read, I haven't found anywhere that he had any family. From what I read, he was just a loner the rest of his life, living in depression. And it's really sad to see that. You know, you wish the NBA would have protected their players back then more. You wish that players back then were treated better. And it's sad to see his life was cut short. And it's sad to see his career was cut short. He could have played a lot longer. So, rest in peace, Woody Sauldsberry. Let me know what you guys think down below. Thanks for watching.